open our Bibles tonight to the book of Esther, chapter 2. Begin reading with verse 8. So it came to pass, when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house, to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, that is Esther, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens which were meet to be given her out of the king's house. And he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house. Remember, he sat at the king's gate. He was probably one of the guards of the palace. And so every day he walked past the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. Now, when every maid's turn was come to go in to King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of the women, 12 months to get ready. And you think your wife is slow. Wow, okay. According to the manner of the women, for so were the days of her purification accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil and myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the women. Then thus became every maiden unto the king, whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women into the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Shazgaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She went from being a maiden, now she is one of the king's many concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she was called by name. And when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken unto the king Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. Our theme tonight is God overrules sin. And he still, after overruling sin, still works it out for his honor and for his glory. But I believe there's another very valuable lesson here that is often missed in most of society today. I think it's something that is so important that it bears spending several minutes tonight looking at one aspect of this story that I believe we see over and over and over and over again today. With that in mind, let's get straight into the lesson. The first point is beauty. We've already established that Esther was very beautiful. She was beautiful enough that she made it to the initial playoff. And I'm using this in our scenario, our Miss America, Miss Universe, and all of the other beauty pageants that we have. Once she made it in the contest, her beauty and charm won the pleasure of the keeper of the women. She was beautiful, so beautiful that when he saw her, he immediately gave her the best room, the best maidens to help her, the best of the oils, the best of the myrrh, the best of the scents, smells. Her beauty and her charm gained her favor with him, but it also gained her favor with all that saw her or looked upon her. Finally, when her day came to go to the king, her beauty and her charm was so great that it pleased the king. She won the heart of the king, or maybe lust would be a better word. And she became the queen of all of King Ahasuerus' kingdom. By every standard of that day, she was the most beautiful woman anywhere in all of the kingdom. Well, that got me to thinking, what is beauty? And I'm sure as soon as I asked the question, most of us had immediately a flash go through our mind of what we think is beautiful. However, and this is historical fact, most beauty today is strictly geared to the lust of the flesh. And I'm debating how detailed to go into, but I think for now I'll just leave it at the surface and you can use your own imagination. Most people that we call beautiful today have a certain size, a certain shape, a certain look about them. They have certain body parts that are designed and used by many women for no other purpose than to appeal to the lust of men. I remember a lady, this has been many years ago, but she bragged about the fact, she openly bragged that if you want to get men's attention, you got to show a lot of flesh. That was her idea of beauty, is exposing myself to the lust of men so that they will think that I am good looking and I will get their attention by appealing to nothing more than the lust of the flesh. The other thing about beauty is that it changes from generation to generation. Now, I don't know what happened. When it comes to computers, I know very, very little. My wife has not even seen this yet. But somehow, when I did my screensavers, it went back, and I don't even know where it found them, but it found some pictures of my wife and I from many, 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 many years ago. And even knowing who we are, we look so different back then. We didn't even resemble ourselves today. I actually had hair. I know that's hard to believe. We look so different. I remember I told you the first time we met the other night, and one look and I thought, wow, this girl is beautiful. She had hair, which I'm still partial to. She had hair down to below her waist, and it's like, wow, she is good looking. But beauty changes from generation. I don't look not even close. I'm not even close to what I looked like 53 years ago when we got married. And I bet if we were to look at your pictures, now your wedding pictures would still resemble you, but come back in 50 years and look at your wedding pictures and see how much you have changed. Beauty changes from generation to generation. Beauty changes over time in what is considered beautiful. Now, I read, and there's no reason to doubt that it's true, from everything that I read, in ancient times, and probably all the way back to the days of Ahasuerus, a woman was considered beautiful if she was, quote, plump or fat. A skinny woman was considered ugly. A fat woman was considered to be pretty because it meant that she was healthy. She had plenty of good food to eat. And so when they looked at a woman, they looked at her size and said, oh, she's plump. That means she's probably rich because she can afford to buy all the food she wants. And that means she's probably healthy because she's got lots to be healthy with. Most of you today would not be considered marriageable material because every one of you are too skinny. Boy, have times changed. Nowadays, if you've got more than a 10 waist, you're considered fat and ugly. We used to work with a woman, and you ladies can tell me how this is possible. She was very skinny. I could put both hands around her belly, her waist, and still overlap my fingers. And so she was talking one day about it's really hard to find a dress that fits her. And I said, what size do you wear? And this is the part I don't understand women's clothes. She said, I wear a zero dress. How is it possible to be zero? If you can explain it, more power to you. She was so skinny. I mean, skinny, that I'm not exaggerating. I could put both hands around her waist and still overlap. We have allowed Hollywood. We've allowed Miss America, Miss Universe, to warp our opinion of what is considered beauty today. Most women today would be considered puny, sickly, and too poor to eat enough to keep weight on them. Boy, have we changed. Is fleshly beauty overrated? I say emphatically yes. Anorexia has become a national problem. How many of you know what anorexia is? Most of you. That's where you starve yourself. Literally, you starve yourself so that you can get down to a zero waist or whatever. When I go and I'm looking for clothes, and I looked at for a new belt the other day, and I refused to buy it because the ones that said I needed were way too big size-wise, and I refused to buy anything that large. But we measure, okay, you know, you've got a 32 waist, all right? Everybody knows what a 32 waist. Women, I don't understand it, but because of the emphasis that society has put on women especially, that you gotta be skinny, you gotta be skinny, you gotta be skinny, that anorexia is a major problem. Now, education has helped some. You know, fortunately, you know, many girls have seen the folly of that and have realized. We know a lady who was very much anorexic. She ended up in the hospital many times from just starving herself to death. She ended up in the hospital and was so bad that there was some concern that she might even possibly die because she had been convinced that to be pretty, you have to be super, super skinny. Is that really what Christianity is about? Unless you think only lost people have a problem with this. The lady I just mentioned was very, very active in a Baptist church, very faithful. We knew her parents. They were godly people. We would probably associate with them if they were closer. She was raised in a godly Christian home, active in church, but she had been brainwashed by society in thinking unless you got a skinny waist, you're ugly. She almost killed herself trying to be good looking. Peter had the right idea about beauty. If you want to write this down, or if you want to turn and mark it in your Bible, 1 Peter chapter 2. I'll give you just a second when you to find it. I've read this before, but some of you may not remember it or may not have heard it. 1 Peter chapter 2, Verse 1, likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may, without being preached at, without being, constantly preached at, without the word, be won by the conversation of the wife. The word conversation means your daily life. Notice in verse 2, while they behold your chaste conversation, your pureness of life, your pureness of walk. Verse 3, who's adorning? What do you spend time on? What do you adorn the most? Who's adorning? Let it not be that outward adorning, plaiting the hair, wearing gold, or putting on the right apparel. Isn't that where most people put their emphasis today? Making sure that, that their hair is just right. Making sure that they've got enough gold and diamonds and everything. Making sure that they look outwardly so that the world will accept them as somebody worthy of respect or of attention. Peter said, don't waste your time. Fancy clothes, jewelry, hair, all of that stuff. But in verse 4, here is what you need to emphasize. Let it be the hidden man of the heart. Obviously, in the context, man, he's talking to wives, he's talking to women. So man there obviously refers to either or. Men can sometimes be just as bad. Let it be that which is not seen outwardly, but it's the hidden inside of you. In that which is not corruptible. Even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. Now, I preached that before. Not a whole sermon, but I've used that verse. And I find that most women have been so indoctrinated, they have been so brainwashed by the world that you can read it and read it and read it, and when the push comes to shove, they still will put the outward beauty ahead of a hidden, meek, and quiet spirit. I have seen it many, many times. Looks can change. I mentioned I don't look like I did 55 years ago. Now, whether it was better or worse, I will let you decide. But looks can change. What would happen? You marry a young lady because she is drop dead beautiful. And she's in a car wreck and her face is scarred and mutilated, and suddenly she doesn't have that outward beauty that you once thought she had. And I'm talking to all of us. If you marry strictly based on external beauty, if something happens to mar that outward beauty, you've got nothing to love, because your love was based on external beauty. Looks can sometimes hide a terrible personality. I've seen ladies that by the world's standards would be a 9+. But when you get to know them, they're as rotten as a barrel full of rotten apples, and they're as angry and dangerous as an angry rattlesnake. Oh, but she's beautiful. What's her personality? Oh, I don't know, but wow, she's beautiful. What's she like when she gets angry? Oh, I don't know, but boy, she's beautiful. What happens if she is in a wreck? Or she gets sick and her illness causes a physical deformity? Would you still love her, or is your love based purely on external things that say nothing about the person inside? I've known women, and I'm preaching mostly to women. When you meet them, your first thought is, oh, how would you like to wake up and kiss that every morning? Oh! But when you get to know them, they're the sweetest, nicest, lovingest, kindest people. And after a while, you fall in love with what they are, and you don't even notice their outside. You don't even see their deformities. You don't even see their physical restrictions, because you fell in love with the person and not merely a physical object. Now, let's look at Esther in the moments we have left. One of the things we read is that Mordecai encouraged her to participate in a wicked, immoral beauty contest. The king's decree goes out. I want every beautiful young virgin in the country. Esther passed the first level, knowing what was going to happen, knowing that she would be judged strictly on outward physical beauty, knowing that she would have to participate in the lust of the king. Knowing that, Mordecai still pushed her to participate in this beauty contest so that she would get her one night with the king and maybe get to be the queen. He encouraged her to take part in what he knew would be a sin-filled affair just to gain a position, possibly, maybe if I do this, I can get to be queen. Now, I've always wondered, and I've wondered this for, 40, 50 years. Why would any parent push their daughter's beauty to appeal to the lust of a man just to gain favor with the world? And if you stop and think, I bet you know of national girls, young girls, who have been pushed and pushed. And as they get older, they are pushed to appeal to the lust of men on the hope that maybe I can use my beauty and his lust to gain a position, a promotion, a job. Why would any respectful woman desire and encourage her daughter to participate in such sinful, wicked behavior? I personally happen to believe that women are born with a certain degree of conscience. I believe that girls are born with a certain level of a sense that some things are just wrong. And in most cases, it's the parent that taught them to go against their own conscience, their basic natural consciousness, to do such wicked, filthy, immoral things. Their conscience has to be seared and twisted to believe what is obviously wrong is somehow right. I don't think girls are born with that. I think most girls know that at a certain age, certain things are just plain wrong. Well, she got her promotion. She, of all the hundreds of other girls, was chosen to be queen. She got that job. And if you don't think women will use their bodies to gain promotions, see me later. Maybe I can open your eyes. She got a life of wealth and luxury. She gained a life of power and praise. By earthly standards, she was extremely blessed with everything anybody could possibly hope for. She had everything you could ever wish. Married to the king, which came with all the wealth of the king, all the popularity of the queen, all the prestige of being a queen. But she had to sell her body in order to get that position. Now the question comes up, how could God possibly bless such sinful behavior? And I touched on this the other night. And I'm not going to go through all the scriptures, because if I took all night, I still couldn't explain it any better than what I'm going to say now. I know that God has a decreed will. These are things that are going to happen. Paul said that whom he foreknew, he predetermined. He predestinated. They will be conformed into the image of my Son, either in this life or in the next life. That is decreed, that is predestined, that is predetermined. you are going to be like Christ. It's also predetermined. God has so decreed that everything ultimately is going to give honor and glory to Him. But I also believe, and not all of my friends do, but I believe, and I'm sure the Bible is in my mind beyond question, God has a permissive will. Now, how those two work together, I'll leave that to the theologians. But we do know, Paul wrote over and over, that every man, which includes women, will give an account of the deeds done in this body. God permits us to sin. And then, in ways known only to Him, He allows us to choose to sin. And then He overrules and overrides our sin and still turns it around so that ultimately He is honored and glorified. How is that possible? If I knew that, I would be God. I would know as much as God does. I know that we are going to give an account. We're going to stand before God and be judged by what we chose to do in this life. But I also know that all things, everything, works together ultimately for my good and God's honor and God's glory. God never, never approves of sin. Never, 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 never does God ever approve of sin. He permits it because of our own sinful nature. But then He still turns it around and gets honor and glory. God permitted her to take part in this wicked, sinful ordeal. But then He used her position as queen to deliver her people from death. I've been asked the question, could not God have delivered them some other way? My answer is simple. Yes, God could have used some other way to deliver them. But since she chose to use her body in an immoral way to become queen, God used her position to deliver the Jews from certain annihilation. Now, I have 3 very quick, easy questions to close by. Was it worth it to gain the world's approval? I know, unfortunately, I know a lot of men, and I know for every unfaithful man, there's a willing accomplice in the woman. I understand, but I have known dozens, maybe even many dozens, of men who sacrificed morality, sacrificed their marriage to get ahead in this world. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? One man I think of left a beautiful young wife. Well, she's not young. She left a beautiful wife, a faithful wife, because he found somebody that was more appealing to his flesh. But it wasn't very long till she found someone else who was more appealing to her flesh. And last I heard, he was on his third or fourth wife. Was it worth it? He lost his job because of some hanky-panky at work. Lost his job for an international company. He was way, way, way up near the top of an international company. Lost his job because he wanted something more appealing to his flesh. How much are you and I willing to compromise morality in order to gain worldly approval? Now, I've never been cursed with women just falling at my feet and saying, "Here am I." I've never been cursed with that. How much sin are you willing to commit and tolerate in order to gain the praise of this world? Last question. How much truth are you willing to compromise to be liked by the world?